Hello, everyone listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube. It's another episode of NRG Insights. And for those of you who don't know, so this is all about the mortgage market. It's funny enough shedding insights into whether that be lending, broking, kind of ancillary products into the market. And we speak to people who can genuinely kind of add value into the market and explain their side of things, and yeah, anyone who is, I don't want to say influencer, but anyone who has an influence on the market. So with that, I've got Louisa Sedgwick today, who is the MD of Mortgages at Paragon Bank. Thanks for joining me, Louisa.
Welcome, absolute pleasure.
So start with, tell me about your kind of financial services journey to how you got to where you are today as MD of Mortgages.
So, interestingly, like everybody else in mortgages, I woke up one day and said, it's mortgages for me all the way.
Mortgages.
Yes, this is me, this is my future.
Can I just say, there's one person that I've interviewed, and that's Sandeep Patel, who's the only person who's ever gone, no, I actually wanted to get into mortgages. I think he tells lies.
I think that's because Sandeep has a very nice portfolio of properties, so that's probably why.
Because all his family worked weekends, and he wanted to get a job that didn't work weekends, so he was like, mortgages.
That makes sense. He does a great job.
Yeah.
So I left school with very few qualifications, and I decided to do a YTS scheme, which clearly were very popular in those days, so that maybe gives away my age. And I did a YTS scheme in travel and tourism because my world was all about expanding my opportunities in the world.
Yeah.
And I soon found that at £27.50 a week, I probably wasn't going to be able to travel very far. It would just about get me to work, which was in Manchester when I lived in Rochdale. So it wasn't great. And ultimately, I left travel and tourism after a few years, and I joined Bradford and Bingley as was, and I actually joined on a temporary contract as a mortgage administrator. It was a 6-month contract, and it was kind of, right, let me get me into what feels like a really good place to work. It was on the high street in Rochdale, and I aspired to going into something that little bit more professional, I suppose, is what I was looking at. I was a little bit gobby, and so I ended up moving from administration and onto the counter because I entertained customers as they stood in the queue.
You were customer service driven and
customer service. Yeah. The charismatic bit's probably lost over the years, but at that time in my early 20s, I was pretty charismatic. So I enjoyed that, and I actually moved up the ladder within Bradford and Bingley fairly quickly, which was great. I think 2 or 3 people saw something in me and actually were really good mentors and helped me along my career path, which, I would advocate anybody to look at.
We'll touch on that later, actually. I'm interested to know that,
I think it is really important, critically important. And so I enjoyed a really good career at Bradford and Bingley. I actually moved from retail, so I was ultimately branch manager in quite a sizable office in Manchester, and I moved from there into intermediary mortgages, despite the fact that everybody said the future's in retail, don't move into intermediary, this is not the way forward. I actually moved into a BDM position in and around the Manchester area. And then again, ultimately, I became regional manager. Then I moved into corporate accounts, and then head of sales, and then Bradford and Bingley. Unfortunately, in 2008, took a nosedive, and so I actually stayed behind when everybody else had left because, of course, there's nothing to sell despite being head of sales. I stayed behind and helped to look after the arrears world. So I actually looked after asset managers, LPA receivers, debt collection agencies, so all of the stuff that kind of worked around that arrears.
Do you think that helped you career-wise, looking back, the fact that you got a bit more of a well-rounded, you didn't just jump ship and do something else, you stay behind and I
think it probably did, because actually quite often now when you try and think about whether or not you would lend to a particular customer, you kind of go, actually, as much as the world has moved on and regulation is clearly a lot better than it was historically, and there's a lot more governance and oversight in how we lend to customers, which is really good. You still question whether or not it's the right decision to lend to a particular customer. So there is that element of me that has just got that little bit of something in the background questioning what I do. So I stayed there for 2 or 3 years, and then I managed to orchestrate my own redundancy, which was absolutely amazing. Fantastic opportunity at the time.
Put yourself up for voluntary redundancy and then accept it.
It's like, how did that happen?
That's me.
But that was a good while ago, and at that point I'd got a very young daughter, so it was fantastic because I got to spend some really good quality time with her whilst dabbling, doing a little bit of consultancy around arrears management, etc. So I did what I needed to do and wanted to do at that particular time. And then I joined Leeds Building Society, who are an amazing employer, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there. And then I got a tap on the shoulder to go and join a brand new startup. And what's not to love about the excitement around a new startup?
Yeah.
And that was Vida Home Loans, as was.
You know what, you say that, but that was it genuinely exciting? Because obviously you've worked in some decent sized corporates, fairly steady. Like, startups aren't for everyone, right? There's an element of kind of doing everything, pitching in. Like, I speak to people, I get startups, I love it, because it's exciting, isn't it? I mean, maybe not.
It is exciting, but it's not without its challenges. It's a tough gig, and of course you've got other things. So Vida and now Vida Bank, and they've just recently secured their banking license, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
They've worked really hard to get that, and I think that's a really good move for them. At the time, we were a new startup. We didn't have our regulatory permissions in place, so I was kind of jumping from a really safe environment that was Leeds into something that was a bit of an unknown. But
it might not actually happen, mightn't it? By the time you get your license,
it might never happen.
Yeah,
But it was exciting, and you could see that you could build something that was going to be really good going forward, and actually you're going to add some value to the intermediary space, and that was where I was at with that. And I stayed there for 4.5 years, and it was absolutely fantastic. But then I got another tap on the shoulder to do the same thing again elsewhere, which actually ultimately they didn't pursue the new lending option, and that was probably the right thing, because at the time, the economic environment didn't lend itself particularly.
And when was that? What date-wise is that?
So that's only literally in the last 3 years. So that was So it was the right decision for them to make, and actually I absolutely agreed with it. And then I was offered the opportunity at Paragon, and Paragon are very similar culturally to what I've experienced before in the building society kind of sector.
Yeah.
They've been around for a long time. They've earned their stripes. They've got some amazing people, and I love working for Paragon. It's absolutely fantastic. The exec team are brilliant. They're fresh, despite the fact that they've been there for a long time. They've always got some great new ideas. They're incredibly supportive of the team that work within the Paragon family, which is what you ultimately can call it. So I'm I think I've found my place, and having been there for 12 months or 14 months I was then promoted to MD as Richard left to join together. So it's fantastic, because this position is one that I've coveted for years. So when I was at Mortgage Express, I used to look across to John Heron and go, he's got the best job in the industry.
Great job.
It's a brilliant job. It's a brilliant company. They do everything really well, everything properly. And I used to go, one day, you just never know, Louisa, one day. And ultimately, that's where I am. So I'm incredibly proud but very appreciative of what I've managed to get, the position that I've managed to get to. So that's kind of a bit of a
amazing. Do you think it sounds like it? I'm probably going to take this wrong. It sounds like you've been lucky in parts, but it's down to your hard work, right? Because you just said I was really lucky that your maternity came around at the same time as redundancy, and then the job came because the chat went together. But there's an element in luck in every great career. However, do you ever feel that way, or is it? Because the harder you work, the luckier you get as well, right? So you've had to put yourselves in those positions. But do you feel like is it all hard work, or do you think things have come? It seems like they've come at the right time from what you just said then.
Yeah, the harder you work, the luckier you get, I suppose. It's kind of there is an element of both. There is an awful lot of putting yourself out there, making sure that you notice, make sure people recognise the value that you add, and it's all about adding value. If I don't add value, then there's probably not really a great deal of point in me being somewhere. Yeah. So I beat myself up around, what have I achieved today? Have I managed to give something today? What is it that we're focusing on? And I beat myself up an awful lot about that. And
that's
there is an element.
I wrote down as you were talking about what advice would you look for people going through that managerial path, but value adding is it, right? Because we can all do the job as it stands. But how much extra you give in, I think, is really important for people, and to be giving it before you get that promotion, or before you look to get that next step up. I think it's really important that people understand that you've got to give as much as you can, right?
Absolutely, and also just be visible. Don't be arrogantly visible. Look at me, this is what I've achieved today. It's knowing in yourself that you are adding value. And, there are days when I think I've achieved nothing today. And I really get quite frustrated by the fact that I've achieved nothing. And then there's brilliant days like yesterday where, we corral the team. I've had some great meetings, with the wider team within mortgages. They've brought some challenges to me, and, we've tried to address some of those things. And actually I go away and I go to bed at night and think, do you know what, today's been a really good day. And I've added value. And nice. I just think it's really important for us to just check in. Are we just doing what we're always doing? Yeah. Because if that's what we do, then that's what we'll get. As there's the crude saying, but it is absolutely true.
And you've got 160 people in your remit at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's everything from broker registration right the way through to release of funds, so completions basically. So everything that's covered. And then when customers want to stay with us, I also look after the retention world as well. So, got you. So it's good. And I'm really fortunate that I've got a brilliant leadership team. I was going to say, how does that tear down? Because you can't manage 160 people. Well, they say that you can manage 8. Is that like the normal? That's the norm if you need any kind of business. Yes. I'm lucky. I've only got 50% of that. But am I lucky? Yeah. So I've got a commercial director who is basically doing what my old role plus his old role. So he's got a much bigger remit, but that suits him. He's really happy with that and he's excited by it. He's an excitable individual anyway, so it's great that he's actually just, he's excited about his world. Transformation, so all of the tech stuff, the front end transformation, again, is sitting in my world. So I've got transformation director and then the new business operations director, and she looks after underwriting new business completions. So again, all of that. And then I have somebody that looks after sales support, but also looks after me in many ways, which is also incredibly important and really helpful. So I've actually got quite a small team, but then below them, they've got on average about 6 or 7.
Got you. So the structure is the right way of tearing down, right? Because you've only got so many hours in the day for you. I'm sure you're still. Every time I speak to an MD, they just go. It's just an infinite checklist. It's never finished.
You never finish. But also, I think the fact that the team by having a smaller team means that you can work really well on succession planning. So, at some point, I'm not going to be working for Paragon forever. I love what I do, and as long as I can add value, then I'll be there. But at some point, I want to say, do you know what? I want to go back to those travelling days that I wanted to do when I was, 17.
Like that travelling tourism.
Never goes away. It never goes. I'm not going to work in travelling tourism, but I'm going to take advantage of the travelling bit. And so we need to be in a position that it's a real easy, transition into the next person.
And is that all quite transparent for everyone? So it's kind of like they know what you do. Everyone understands each other's roles fairly well, so that when that happens, it's a relatively easy transition.
It should be. I think what we've worked on probably over the last 6 months is around transparency, and so I am incredibly transparent. I do wear my heart on my sleeve, sometimes probably too much.
I honestly think that is a trait of a great leader, though, transparency, because there's people who are very good at being good at their job but not letting anyone know why that is, because it's kind of maybe a protection thing, I don't know, but some people are very insular about how they go about their business.
And maybe also a bit of a control thing as well, isn't it? Whereas, I am not, I don't think I'm controlling. I might find otherwise once
I'll ask the other
ask the other guys. I don't think I am. I am very transparent, and I think we work together really well as a team, and I think because of the way in which we're now working together, the rest of the mortgages team also work really well together. So, we've kicked off. We now have regular monthly updates. So I literally do a State of the Nation every fourth Wednesday. But not just me. They don't just hear from me. They hear from the rest of the senior management team, but also other execs within the business. What's going on over in development finance, what's happening within our operational world, what's happening within IT and change, etc. So it's not just about mortgages. If we look at Paragon is a wider bank. We've got retail savings, we have got development finance, commercial finance, SME finance, all of these other aspects of the business that make us a success.
And do you think that's important to let those guys know in mortgages, like how Dev gets on? Do you know? Just so they know as a bank
Well,
rather than as a, it's just me. I do mortgages, or I do a particular small. I'm pigeonholed. I do admin for mortgages. You know. Is it?
no, so it's really, really important because even just snippets of, we do development finance and we do it on, new build properties, and it's brilliant. But some of those customers within the development finance world might want to hold on to some of those properties and rent them out.
Yeah.
So why are we not looking after them in mortgages? And that's
Yeah.
the kind of, working in collaboration means that actually we'll grow, and they'll grow, and actually you end up with a really happy customer who's gone through a really good process to get
Yeah.
from literally a plot of land to renting out these properties. And we know we've got really good properties on our books because wave away.
It's not my light. Yeah. There you go.
We've got great properties on our books because we've supported the build of them. So
Yeah.
all of
And
these
because of that,
initiatives.
is it really important to make sure that the customer journey is the same across each, like between Dev and Buy-to-Let? Because if you get in a different experience, it feels like a different bank, right? So surely that's got to be really important for the,
Of course
for the
it does,
customer journey.
and it is massively important. Otherwise, like you're absolutely right, they might as well go somewhere else if they're not going to get that same journey. So you kind of think about how does that work around surveyors. We have our own in-house surveyors, so we're really lucky that it would be the same surveyor.
Yeah.
Solicitors, can you make sure that it's the same solicitor so they're not having to go through all of this, whatever that journey
Yeah,
looks
so
like,
someone
and how
understands
difficult
the
that is.
project already.
Yeah. So, you kind of have to join those things up. And if we don't know what's going on in development finance and they don't know what's going on in mortgages, the likelihood is they'll continue to not have any sort of joined up approach. So the fact that they're now starting to get a view of the rest of the business and also, our retail savings team are so critical to us because if we don't
money.
have enough, absolutely. If they don't bring in the money, we can't spend it, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's how it
Reality,
is.
yeah.
So the guys in mortgages need to recognise the importance of and the value of their colleagues over in our retail savings arm.
Yeah.
So all of these things, knowing how the whole piece ticks, is really important. So we've
Is
kicked
that
off
difficult
those.
though? Is that tricky with the, because it's just so big? Do you know, like getting a customer journey to look the same all over? That
Oh yeah, I
must
mean
be a tough
you're never
part.
gonna
No.
get it because
And it's
also
constantly
they've got
evolving as well.
they've different needs. But if we all understand what it is that each of us are doing,
Yeah.
then brilliant. And also, what's really good with that is I might have somebody who's a mortgage underwriter who says, I'm really keen to go and explore what happens in development finance. So
Yeah.
can I have can I go over into development finance for 6 months? Yeah, if we can make that happen, then yes, let's make that happen. Because ultimately, we might lose them to development finance.
Yeah,
but
somewhere
I'd
else.
rather lose them to development finance than to another one of our competitors.
Yeah.
So you kind of think, if we look at their succession planning and what they want to achieve, it's really, really important that we open up some of these doors for them. And I have to say, within Paragon, it is absolutely brilliant, and
Yeah.
it's very transparent. We've signed up to a program called Progress Together, which is lots of different. Well, I say lots of. There's a 5 or 6 different firms, financial services firms, who are going to have opportunities for some people in Paragon maybe to go over to Coventry Building Society.
Really?
And spend 6 months there on a secondment.
That's even harder, isn't it? Because you don't know how.
Oh,
you
it's
don't know how they
absolutely
train.
it is. But you've got to take that risk. You kind of go, I've got this person
But,
over
culturally,
here.
your 5 different companies or 6 different companies is,
Yeah,
it's always gonna be a bit different.
as part of the process, then clearly they've taken some of that culture into account because there are some similarities. And interestingly, it is predominantly building societies that have formed part of this, and we're a bank.
Yeah.
So we are a bit of an outlier in that sense, but actually the culture is very similar. So
I know
so
you
we
said that
have.
before about the culture being a bit more building society-ish, if that's a word. What do you mean by that? As in, what sort of culture have you built there that you feel is different from where perhaps you've been in the past?
So we've been around for 40 years this year, and our CEO is the longest standing CEO of a FTSE 250 company, and he's been in post for 29 years.
That's almost unheard of, isn't it? Well,
But it's great because he's fresh.
Yeah.
And I'll go and say, Nigel, I've got a problem with this. Talk to me about it. Show me how that's going to work. How can we make that
remember
better?
what you said about when is the time to leave, about adding value and that kind of thing. The perfect word, then, like you said, is fresh. That's the most important thing, isn't it? You're not
He
doing the same
remains,
thing
yeah,
day in, day out, because that's
yeah,
what you've always done. Because that's when things collapse, right? So
yeah,
still having
yeah.
that energy to be able to change with the times.
He's and he is full of energy.
Yeah.
He's absolutely full of it. So he's got 30 years this year.
Wow.
Is and it is phenomenal, and it is a wow because he's
That's
also
phenomenal,
incredibly
like
well respected.
stress-wise. Most people
I
can't do
know,
it for that long, just for,
I
be
know.
a ticker.
I know. You look at him and go, "Wow, how does he manage to do all of
How
that?"
that guy
But he,
runs.
but he's brilliant. And our CFO has been in post for a similar period of time. Not as long, but he's certainly been with Paragon for 30 years, which is a
Right.
long time because they've been there man and boy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how they've been. But they know where all the skeletons are, and they also recognise what's going on in the marketplace and how we need to adapt.
Yeah.
And
Oh, they
and
must have seen
certainly.
the cycle. They're in their third cycle.
Well, they are. Sometimes that's not a great thing because they remember too much about what happened
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
first and second
2008,
cycle.
everyone
But yeah,
down.
it's like we're not on there now. We're in a regulated
Yeah.
environment, so it is a bit different. But again, they recognise what's going on in the industry within the economic environment, and again that it's kind of we need to do this. We need to adapt to change. And I think in the last 18 months in particular, Paragon has changed enormously, and actually. The perception of Paragon has changed as well. We've gone from being you just do specialist buy-to-let, big limited companies and
Yeah.
complicated structures to actually no, we do a lot more than that, and it's a lot wider. And we are new, we are fresh, we are still trying to explore new avenues, new
Like you said, it's the difference,
propositions.
isn't it? Being able to reignite yourself and
And we're
kind of put yourself out
constantly,
into the
yeah,
market and just go, look, this
yeah,
is not just what we've always done.
correct. I mean, we've just literally just launched our new originations platform. That was we launched it on a pilot in September of last year, and we're now rolling it out into March of this year. And that's all with API links, and it does all of this stuff for us, and we can get real time feedback and real time accept, decline, responses, which again is unheard of for Paragon. We've
Yeah.
had the same system for 30 years and worked on the same system and just built it out.
Yeah.
And it worked, and it's done really well, and it's served us really
Was that a
well.
complete
But
overhaul then, like start from scratch?
complete, yes. So
Wow.
we looked out to the marketplace to see whether or not there was anything available to us in the market, and there wasn't. So we built our own.
Yeah.
So we've spent 2 years basically building our own system.
A lot of development.
And it's a lot of development, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely superb. The transition for some of the existing brokers that have used us for a long time, it's going to be a bit different because we're maybe expecting them or asking them to do a little bit more than they had done previously.
No
But
one
any
ever
new
sees new
broker
tech and is
using
really
us is
happy with
not.
it straight away anyway, are they? Like, they're
Because
so used to
it's
using
like
it.
absolutely, and we've got to go through that internally as well with our underwriters
Yeah.
because that change for them, they're used to a black and green screen, which is just hideous. But they've been used to that for so long that then
Yeah.
you've got something shiny and new, and it doesn't work in the same way as the old one worked. It's better, but it's different. So
It is not, people
they're
don't
all
like
learning.
change, do they? It is funny. Like,
They don't. They don't.
you're just not used to something. You're doing it the same way for ages. And like you say, once you embrace it, you go, this is so much better once you see
Yeah.
it. But you got to
Yeah,
get it right, haven't you? And that's your brokers
yeah.
and your internal and everyone.
Yeah,
It's a tough one.
it's interesting. Yesterday morning, I did. It's the first one I've done, and actually, it was great. I put an hour in the diary for just people to just come along. We picked at random some people, and there were 15 of them in the room. Just come and ask me any questions that you have. What are your concerns? What are you worried about, etc. And we put an hour in the diary. We ran for an hour and a quarter. I think we probably could have gone on for longer, but
Yeah.
it was good. It was a really good use of the
And
time.
were they
I
bringing their
enjoyed it.
concerns of their colleagues as well? Just like
Yeah, so well,
asking-
I think because it was the first one, they didn't really know what to expect. So
Oh,
when I
okay.
sat there and said, "Right, come on, I'm here. You've got me
Yeah.
for an hour. What do you want to know?" And they were like, "Oh, I don't really know." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a bit of an insight of what's going on externally, what the world looks like within
Yeah.
the buy-to-let arena, private rental sector, the headwinds ahead. What it is that we're facing into," and that kind of warmed them up. And then they were just asking lots of questions, and they were asking questions about, working and how often they needed to be in the office, and that might be something that
We'll
we
talk
wanna
about that.
talk about, yeah. But also we've got this shiny new system, and we're a bit concerned about where we find things and what have you. And one of the girls had actually broached and said, I'm not really comfortable with it. I don't think I like it. when we'd finished chatting about it, she said, "I just need to use it, don't I?"
Yeah. Well, that's the magic,
Really,
isn't
yeah,
it?
that's it.
Yeah.
You have to use it, because if you don't use it, you're never going to get used to it, and then
We've
you're
we've
always
had the
going to have this
same.
barrier.
Well, every time we add something new, we've added automation now. We spent quite a lot of money last year on a lot of back office stuff that is only inevitably ever going to help our consultants, because it's all the stuff they don't have to do. But the initial pushback, and we're a team of 8, so the initial pushback on that was massive, because it's just not the way we've done it, and I think I can save time doing it this way. And so to have 160 plus your team, plus your brokers, or plus your customers to do it, I don't envy the task of turning everyone's head, because it's hard enough to just go, and you can't just do it. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to.
But come the end of March, we're just going to go, that is being switched off. You have got to do it this way.
There's no choice.
We'll see. But it's
It's
very intuitive.
You want everyone to buy into embrace the fact that it's for their best interest.
Yeah, it's a brilliant system. It's faster, it's slicker, it's more efficient. As I say, we've got all these API links, reaching out to everybody, and the brokers will love it.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic new system.
Yeah, once they got used to it, I don't use it.
Once they got, but I used to like the old one. Well, you did, but it's broken. We've switched it off.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the one thing that brokers complain about, is that lenders' systems are not up to date. And then they'll go, this is a bit too up to date. They've changed it.
But, we're all...
No, Barclays do it, but...
we're all human, aren't we? Because, we as much as we'll sit there and say we love change, we embrace change, it's all brilliant, there's still got to be an element of resistance towards it, because it is new.
It's a natural survival instinct, isn't it? Like, this isn't right, because this is not a thing I've always done to stay alive.
Yeah, so I've moved from a diesel car to an electric car, and I have to say I've been at this now for 8 or 9 months, and I'm still not convinced. So I'm trying it really hard, but I'm still
going to embrace the change. But like, this is annoying. So let's go on to. I know you kind of touched on it then about like the hybrid, the working from home. Like this is quite a contentious issue at the moment. It's getting more, and I do think it's relevant to the fact that we've had a couple of really hard years, and we kind of revert back to what we know, and that is to get people in front of us again. But talk to me about that. I mean, I could bang on about it all day, but I want to know your opinion on what's your thoughts and Paragon's thoughts on how the market's going to look office-wise as we move forward.
Yeah, so it's because I was asked the exact question yesterday. Are you going to need us in 5 days a week? Is that what you're aiming towards? And my response was, my personal view is that we work more effectively, we collaborate more, we feel better, and we enjoy working in the office once we get into the office. Yeah. So
it's the thought of working, going to the office, that people don't like.
Yeah,
people love being in the office.
But pre-COVID, they would never have thought of anything different. It was, it is what it is. But I also said, if you have aspirations to move up the career ladder, you need to be visible.
Yeah.
So if I'm in Solihull, maybe either a Monday or a Tuesday, or a Tuesday and a Wednesday, if you want succession planning, if you want people to see you, you need to make sure that I know who you are. Yeah. But like, as you did, you have to make yourself visible. You have to make yourself visible. You have to kind of look out to think about, right, who have I got that can help me in my journey? Who sees me? Who sees the value going back to the value add? Who sees what I'm bringing to this party? And how can I utilise them to make my career more effective? And so
there's so many prongs to it. Like, obviously, you can't train people as well from home. You can't collaborate from home. And also, people are lonely. It's the loneliest generation that we've ever had. Yeah, it is. We've got a group of 20 to 30-year-olds who are desperately isolating themselves from the reason we all made friends at work.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I've got a 19-year-old, and when I sit and chat to her, she says, "Oh, I don't want to be working in an office. Why do I want to work in an office?" I said, "Is it the concept of the office, or is it actually going somewhere to do some work?"
Yeah.
And it's kind of, she thinks this home working world is absolutely great. And I just said, if you want to aspire to have a good, solid career, then you need to think about, as I say, visibility. Yeah. And I think that we're now in a situation whereby we are less visible, and you can't build relationships over a screen, and it's just not the same. You can't read the mood music in the room. You can't see what's going on, and who's having challenges with who, and how you try and address some of those situations. You can't do that on a screen.
Do you know what? Interestingly enough, I think one of the best people managers I know, I think, is Michael Allison at Roma, and he sits when everyone comes in, he sits near the front, and he sees people's reactions as they come in. Then he knows where the problems are going to come.
Yeah.
And he knows who to speak to, or who to maybe back off a bit to, whoever it might be. And he sees that from a reaction. And there's no way you can get that in a Zoom. It's just impossible. Because everyone smiles when they come on.
Yeah, of course they do. And they're not going to say, oh, do you know what, I'm having a really bad day today. This is really rubbish or whatever. And you don't then get the camaraderie around, what did you see that? Did you watch Traitors?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you think about her? And, and I can hear some of this.
I do think that we probably, stats-wise, because we're hybrid as well, so I'm a bit hypocritical saying get everyone back in the office, but we do probably send more CVs from home, which is bad because we do tend to talk, but we don't collaborate from home. We don't get better as a business. We don't get people. I mean, we're all very blessed that we're all senior here at the moment. So, but when we get trainees in, it would be selfish of my 12-year, 15-year experienced recruiters to go, well, I want to work from home because someone taught you. And so it's not just the younger generation, it's also the older generation who are getting quite selfish. Like, yeah, we probably could do our job from home. And I don't really need to get better, if you like. I mean, we all do, but you know what I mean? I could sustain a living doing what I'm doing, but how selfish is that? Because someone taught me, and I got good by sitting next to someone who's good. So
Correct.
It's both sides of it. It's the younger generation and the older. We all need to have a look at it and go, what we've got to give a bit back, and they need to take from us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to impose 5 days a week, and probably because the car park can't stand all of those people, and we haven't got enough desks because we brought some. So we haven't now because we probably have. But we closed one of the offices close by and moved everybody into under the same roof.
Yeah.
So that causes problems around capacity. We could do it, but it wouldn't necessarily be as comfortable and as luxurious as the space that we've got today. And I'm never going to say we need to be in 5 days a week. But if one of the team managers says to me, I want my team in 5 days a week, then I will support them. Yeah. Because they will have assessed whether or not that's the right thing.
There's something happening for that to happen, right? Managers don't just make decisions for the sake of making. We don't. If you could all work from home and perform exactly the same and have the same collaboration training, we would do it, right?
Yeah. I think where we have challenges is probably you've got some teams where you absolutely would like them in more often, because it actually supports the working and the business and and them as individuals. Whereas you'll have other teams where you can say, actually, if you only came in once a month, it's not going to make any difference because you can still do your role in the same way, and that's okay. So you've got the disparity between these different teams because you get one that's saying, well, why do they not need to be coming in 5 days a week and I'm in 5 days a week? They don't speak like that, obviously. It's Birmingham, so they don't. They've still got the same pitch but not the same accent. But you'll have those different people suggesting different things that and you kind of, it shouldn't be for us to have to explain why you've got these differences, but you do, because then they can understand
exactly that. And also, people don't look at things as like a business critical outside of my job thing, do they? If you're comfortable in your job and you want to know why my job isn't easier by working from home, as opposed to understanding that Paragon needs you to do this because this happens. Not everyone sees the bigger picture, do they? Which is fair. And they do tend to, like, the manager of the future can see it, but not everyone is a manager of the future, right?
No, absolutely, and nor do they want to be. And it's fine. And some people are very comfortable working from home, doing what they always do, and that works really well from them. And we need those people within the business. We can't have 160 high flyers, because that doesn't work.
You can have your world's best plodders are probably better than some of the people that are high flyers. Because they come and do the job you need them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we need that real blend of individuals. But similarly, I think that it's a real tough one. And I say I'm not going to impose back in the office 5 days a week. I am no Donald Trump. Maybe similar colour hair, I think, but that's about it. There are no other similarities.
You got me going on this now. The one bugbear I have, because obviously I interview hundreds of people about it, and the one thing I struggle with is when people say, well, I've built my life around working from home. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Because it's a 20-minute commute to the office. So if you're talking about doing your washing and stuff, like, tough luck. You have to do your washing at night like the rest of us.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the fact that
it's cheaper then.
If you're talking about the fact that you like to have a nap. What are you building your life around that isn't this 20, 30 minutes in between each end? If you mean you're going to the gym at lunchtime, but that's not really building your life around something. What you mean is you're more comfortable, dear, but if it's a product, you're not as productive. Because you've added something to your life that isn't work. And unfortunately, we're paid in the day to get our job done.
Yeah, we have conversations. I got a dog during lockdown. Oh, super.
As
Look at you. I think
recruiters,
that's,
as
yeah.
recruiters, we just want to start when they go. I moved out the city and I bought a dog who's now got anxiety. I just put the phone.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it. I can't
So
do it.
I just go, that's brilliant. I think that's fantastic that you've added something to your life, and that's brilliant. And you're going to add to the workforce by employing a dog walker.
Yeah,
And your
exactly.
dog will be really happy to see you when you get home in the
I
evening.
always say to people, have you ever considered the dog's got anxiety because you won't leave it alone?
Yeah,
Because
not for us to analyse that one, I don't think. But you know these things, and I had a child during lockdown, and now I need to take my child to and from work. You know, I
yeah,
worked full time when Erin was when she was first born, and as I say, I took a little bit of time off. But
yeah,
then she went to school, and we did wraparound clubs because
just
both my
worked
partner
around
and I
it.
were both working, and that's just what you did. And we've had the luxury of time where we've been able to spend some quality time with our children. I think that's amazing. But how do we adapt that now to make sure that actually we're doing everything right? And there is,
Yeah, yeah.
there is an
I do
element.
kind of get it when people talk about their work-life balance. I just don't. I think we've got the balance wrong. I think your work is really, really important, and also I think it's important to show your kids that I work really hard because I want you to work really hard. You
Yes,
know?
exactly. Because I don't want you to have to rely upon me forever.
Yeah,
It would be quite
yeah,
helpful when you
yeah,
move out. Yeah, there is.
yeah.
I think so. I think there's a lot of things that we probably need to review and think about how we try and build the best way going forward. But
Yeah.
my going back to my earlier point, I do think that people need to be visible in order to continue to progress their careers. If they're
Yeah.
not visible, the likelihood is that they're not gonna move up the any sort of career
And out of
ladder.
interest, do you manage to build data on that yet, where people can go, look, these people that come in are trained better or they work better. It's very difficult to build data on it because we're all working this hybrid.
Yeah, and we offer the same opportunities to all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
they can
you can't
take
do an
or
A/B test and
decline
go, look,
it.
these guys
Yeah,
are better.
it's. I'd love to think that we could, because then when you've got data to support any of your decisions, it makes them an awful lot easier. But I think that's a
Yeah.
really difficult one to try and manage. And over time, I suspect it will all play out, because we've got a nation of people that are not as happy as maybe they were prior to hybrid working. Or are they happier than maybe not?
Well,
We don't know. So I
from
think
what
that
I've
might
seen,
play
and
out.
again, I don't know if it's anecdotal or how data driven it is, but like loneliness is up, right? I don't think that's not a shock to anyone, and yet we all want to work from home. But I don't know, maybe people don't see themselves as lonely. They're just they're isolated. I don't know.
Yeah, they or alone, and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
that's how they want to be. But I do
yeah,
think so. Speaking to some of my, I suppose, broker colleagues in the industry and the difficulties that they've faced over the last 2 years in particular,
yeah,
it's been really tough. The market is tough. Broker earnings are down because they're doing predominantly PTs.
yeah,
We need to move back into a remortgage market, and this year lends itself beautifully to that because we've got an awful lot of products coming to the end of their fixed rate terms. And if
yeah.
rates do start to come down in the next few weeks, months,
Come on,
then
February.
then I think that is lovely. Albeit, of course, there's no direct correlation between the Bank of England and swaps. That it's
Yeah.
madness. But I
No one
think
can work
that
out swaps at the moment, right? You go. You got to be a
every
genius.
day,
Every
every
day.
day, I'm just I wasn't
Yeah,
expecting that. I was expecting after the Trump inauguration for them to go up, but they came off, so that's
yeah.
good.
Strange,
But
isn't it?
only marginally, mine. Not
Yeah,
enough
yeah.
to not
Well,
enough
I
to
mean,
have a
most of it
party
is
over.
marginal as well, isn't it? It's
It
relatively
is
consistent
at the
apart
minute.
from
It's
that.
marginal. Yeah, it is
Yeah, yeah.
marginal. Every day is just very similar. But the broker community and the lender community have had it really tough over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And going back to, if you're doing
And
that
their
in
ancillary
isolation.
services, by the way, we've always been.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody's had a really tough
Yeah,
gig,
yeah,
and I think if you're doing that in isolation, you're doing that in your own little world, then it's exacerbated, isn't it? And if you're
yeah,
not sharing those woes with other people, then actually, that can be really quite damaging. So
yeah,
again, going back to your piece around home
yeah,
versus
yeah.
in the office,
Just having a moan.
just absolutely,
You know?
just sharing how you're
Yeah,
feeling about something. You can say, somebody else might go, do you know what, I'm feeling the same, and then suddenly you go, oh, it's not just me then.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
that's great.
interesting. From obviously my background, I work with lenders and brokers, and we are like that kind of barometer in the sense that I speak to so many brokers, same as lenders, when I go, don't worry, everyone's in the same boat. And I think people think, because again, it's quite insular, and maybe not everyone's part of as many associations as they should be and get involved, that people think they're going for a tough time and everyone else is smashing it because they look at too much LinkedIn. But I'm like, I say to everyone, we're all in the same boat. No one has done amazingly well. Some people have done better than others. But it all depended on what your barometer was before, where your start point was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So if you smashed it last year, there's a very good chance 2023 you didn't do anything. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so don't expect to get the same again this year, because you can't.
Yeah, you probably hit that thing. But it's interesting. We have to speak to people, but you're right. And that must be the same. That must tear down to people, non-business owners, who are like, God, I'm really struggling. And why am I struggling? And I know someone else is doing, everyone puts on their completions, which tend to be inquiries on LinkedIn.
Correct. The last 2 weeks, so literally it is just 2 weeks, I've come off social media. I'm still on LinkedIn because it's, I still see that as a business.
Business, yeah.
But I have come off, I was only on Facebook and Instagram anyway. I came off Twitter or X a while ago because I couldn't stand the noise that it was just constant. So I moved away from that. But I've also now, I've come off Facebook and I've come off Instagram, and it actually feels really good, because I was looking at all these wonderful people that were going out for meals and they were having lovely holidays, and their partners were the most loving individual in the world, and they were so successful, and you go, why am I not like that?
Yeah.
You're not like that because it's not real.
Your partner said something about what makes a good husband, and you think, you definitely just read that off of a picture, a quote of a lovely lumberjack guy who's really looking after his wife.
Stop it, because it's not real. And I actually feel so much better as a result of it. It's really weird. So I'm going to get rid of it all. Apart from LinkedIn.
No, I came off everything apart from LinkedIn like 3 years ago, and I watched my kids, and I want to say to them, like, are you happier because that last half an hour? If you're not, don't do it. There's something else you can do. I think it's worse than like computer games and stuff. Then looking at it, and especially for the kids, and this is me being a bad parent, because actually it's easier to parent when they're scrolling. I've got 4 of them that do it. But yeah, you can't, and I'm the one, I haven't been on it, but they're not happier for it. You're not happier for looking through the highlights of someone else's life.
Yeah, it's a great question. People may or may not have been able to watch the Mortgage Mingle podcast recently, and we were talking about mental health in the workplace, and it was really interesting because we had a specialist on, Sally, who was talking about, just check in with yourself. How do you feel? Are you a 1 or are you a 10?
Yeah.
And if you're a 5 today, what is it that you can do to maybe make yourself a 6 or a 7? If you're consistently a 5, then maybe you need to change something quite radical. If you're a 1, then you've got a problem, and you need to do something about that pretty quickly. And you're absolutely right. It's quite easy to gauge that from your kids, just saying, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because they'll never come off and go, I feel great. It's mind-numbing. I do get it. I also I don't really switch off now because I haven't got that. It's good to switch off.
It's contagious. You literally, and you end up, my other half watches YouTube, which I find phenomenal, and he'll be looking about some rebuilding a sports car, and some guy that does this regularly, and you can see then it's like you were interested in this, watch this. So the next thing you know is they're building a motorbike over here, and then they're over here, and you just go, how many hours have you just spent on YouTube watching somebody build something?
Irrelevant. No, obviously, some of it's helpful, right? I think YouTube's helpful for the right things, and you can build. I looked at Facebook. I have to go on it once a week to check the work stuff. I do it on a Sunday, and I said to my wife, I just lost an hour because I clicked onto my personal one. So it's still in the background. But although I spoke to someone recently, they said, you are always on holiday. And I said, I go once a year. Because I don't post on there. Obviously, if my wife posts a picture, she'll tag me in it. And the only time she does that is on holiday. So that's all they see. So once a year, they see constantly and go, God, I haven't seen you for 10 years, but you're always on holiday. And I think that's not my life. I would love to do it.
Unfortunately, that's retirement.
Yeah.
Going back to where we started.
Travel and tourism. Back to where we are. I mean, I've actually kept you for longer than I said I would, but I've got a couple more questions. If you have you still got time?
Fire away. Yeah, you're absolutely fine.
So let's talk about the sector as a whole. I know we mentioned the last couple of years were tough. We're all slightly more bullish now. Please, for the love of God, things have to change. They can't get worse, right? But how do you see especially with the buy-to-let sector, how do you see that market improving, and any kind of advice for brokers that have taken a bit of a kicking over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think not too dissimilar to the resi market. We've got a lot of properties that are a lot of mortgages that are coming to the end of their fixed rate terms. We've got landlords that will be coming off 2-year fixes moving on to cheaper 2-year fixes.
Yeah.
Hurrah. And we've got landlords coming off 5-year fixes that potentially are going to be moving on to more expensive 5-year fixes. So there's a bit of a disparity, which is quite unusual. It's not just the same, it's the same in the resi market as it is in the buy-to-let market. So I think what's going to happen is we're likely to move into a 2-year cycle of mortgages. So that fixed rate mortgage market is going to probably be 2 years. If I look at buy-to-let and the private rental sector, so let's look at that as a whole rather than just the stuff that's got mortgages on it, because that actually doesn't make up for the majority. It's a minority. Private rental sector, 20% of the overall housing stock, so it's a really strong component of the overall housing market, and it needs to remain that way, because you've got 22 people queuing up for every new rental.
It's nuts, isn't it?
So the demand is so high for that. You've got rental yields in the mid-6s, so mid-6%. So again, pretty strong. In the north, they're in the 8%, so that supports me. I live in the north. In central London, you're looking at about 5%, because, of course, the house prices are more expensive. But that said, yields are really strong. Demand is really strong. What we've now got is, a shift towards that limited company space. So you've got more landlords moving into that that limited company space.
Has that benefited you because you're always in that space? Because you always understood that more complex kind of...
It has, because naturally that feels like it's the right way to go. So you've got landlords that are maybe looking at this and going, this is my career. This is not just me having this as a hobby because I inherited a property 10 years ago. Those types of landlords, unfortunately, they just can't make it work anymore. So when we hear about landlords leaving in their droves, I don't know who you're waving to. When we talk to landlords that, are people that say landlords are leaving in their droves, this is the death
headlines.
of they're headlines. Clickbait, as we know. They're not. What you've got is some landlords that are saying, I've been doing this for 30 years, I'm retiring.
Or I've been doing it, I've been playing at it, and I'm not into it.
And I don't want to do it anymore. So a lot of we are seeing more private rental sector stock going onto the market, but what we don't see is then who's buying them. So it could well be that landlord A is selling and landlord B is buying, and so actually it remains within that private rental sector. That'll take a while to wash through, but ultimately it's really a very strong sector for those people that either can't rent or don't want to rent. So you've got a lot of transient people that are moving around and want to be able to use rental accommodation. So that's great. So the headlines are really strong as far as the rental market is concerned. We have some headwinds, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We've got some headwinds. So you've got the Renters' Rights Bill, and some aspects of the Renters' Rights Bill are not going to be favourable for landlords. However, if you've got a landlord that does have a big portfolio and works that as as their primary income, then actually they'll find their way around it. It will be fine. What we need to do is we need the government to say, right, we're going to do this, but we're going to implement this really smoothly. So we're going to make sure that the court reform is done, and we've got enough capacity in the courts because of the abolition of Section 21, and we need to make sure that any of the tribunals that we're going to set up have also got enough resource in them, because the clue's in the name. If you call something the Renters' Rights Bill, ultimately you're going to have tenants that go, "This is my new right. I don't want to pay that rent." So it might drive some behaviour that will have an adverse effect on landlords. And they've changed a couple of things in the last couple of weeks, which again I think are going to be detrimental. So at the minute that bill has passed through its second reading, it's now got to go to the Lords. So we as Paragon, clearly we're a big buy-to-let lender, so we're having lots of conversations. Me in particular, it feels that with ministers to talk about the impact of the Renters' Rights Bill and
do they understand the impact of it? Is it?
So for the most part they do. I think what we've got is we've got a political situation here whereby the Conservative government failed to implement this bill. So we're going to do it, but they've put lots more belts and braces around it as well, which actually I think ultimately it may have a detrimental effect depending on how it washes through. So it's now going to the Lords. So it'll go to the Lords, and the Lords will say, query the ministers saying, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? If you do this, what do you do? So as an organisation, we are going to be speaking to the Lords and saying, these are the questions that we believe you need to ask, and you need to be really comfortable with the responses that you get before this bill is passed, and before it goes to royal assent. So that's where we are with the Renters' Rights Bill. ultimately there will be some unintended consequences, and
Yeah, of
ultimately
course. Yeah,
some of those smaller landlords may well be adversely impacted by it, but we'll
yeah.
see how that washes through.
It also
So,
wipes out of the issues with the slum landlord type
of course it does. So,
owner.
the likes of,
But it's going to be
the
detrimental to the good guys too, right?
Yeah. So AWAB's law and the decent home standards, absolutely, these are key to make
Yeah,
sure that we give good quality housing to our tenants. It's important for us as a lender that we've got good quality housing,
yeah, yeah.
because should the worst thing happen and we have to take possession of that property, you
You've
want
got
it
to
in the
sell
best possible
it. Yeah,
condition because you've got to sell it on. So everybody benefits from having good quality housing. So we have no question about that at all. But you're
yeah.
absolutely right. We're focusing our efforts on the minority, and actually the majority are the ones that
That get
may
affected.
be
Yeah,
impacted. Yeah. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is the EPC reform and what's going on with that just at the minute. So they've suggested, the government have suggested they want all rental properties to be EPC C or equivalent. We're not sure
yeah,
what that equivalent means,
yeah, yeah.
by 2030. And at the moment, around 50% of the private rental sector is D or worse.
Got ya.
So
It's a
to
lot of
make
work.
so to make all of those improvements in 5 years, one, how is that going to be funded?
Yeah,
The banks are willing to fund, but is there enough equity in the property? Are they going to get any government support? And if so, what does that look like? Big question mark. And actually, have we got the right number of tradespeople to enable us to make these improvements? No.
yeah,
The bottom line is no, we haven't, because those guys are over building 1.5 million homes.
yeah, yeah.
So so we've got the same
They're
works, the
redoing all
same
these planning out for
tradespeople.
all these
And
apartments.
all
Shouldn't
the
they?
yeah. So
They're working on.
we absolutely know that we've got a shortage of tradespeople.
Hmm.
So how that's going to play out, again, I don't know. They've gone for a consultation at the moment around whether or not lenders have voluntary or compulsory targets to adhere to. So
Yeah,
that piece has gone through. The next piece is, what does that EPC reform look like? Are we moving away from EPCs? And if so, you're never going to get it in 5 years,
yeah,
because
yeah. When they say
it'll
equivalent,
take
what does
two
that mean?
years.
Yeah,
It'll take 2 years. But actually, EPCs are a bit of a crude measure anyway. We all know
yeah,
that. It's how much energy is a property utilising. And you might have a really leaky house, but that's got one person in it,
yeah.
and they're using hardly any energy because it's one person. Or you've got a really good house that's got 10 people in it that's using
And
loads
using
of
it
energy.
regularly,
So,
yeah,
it kind of doesn't work. So I can see why they're looking to overhaul that, but the time in which that takes is eating into that 2030 deadline,
yeah,
if
yeah.
that's what they want to do.
Is
So,
that deadline realistic? Do you think now or not? Is it?
in my opinion,
Yeah, yeah. You're
no, I
allowed
don't
to give
think.
your opinion because you're still dealing
Thank
with
you.
it.
That's very good. So I don't think it is realistic, but for the reasons why I've just said, there's a number of things
Yeah, yeah,
that moving parts that we just need to bottom off. So ultimately, going back to the good quality homes, good standard homes for our tenants, absolutely that is critical.
yeah,
But it's got to be done in a realistic way. So those things I think are headwinds. But that said, if the EPC reform does come in whatever guise it comes in, then you're going to need landlords are going to need funding, and they're
yeah,
going to need support from their
yeah, yeah. So
brokers.
from our point of
So
view,
it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, because we know that there's also an awful lot of liquidity of available money. We've
yeah,
also got an awful lot of properties that don't have mortgages on them. So 60% of the private rental stock doesn't have a mortgage on it.
yeah, I
So
didn't
you've
know that.
you've got landlords that are asset rich and cash
Yeah,
poor. So it could
and
well
they've
be
got a
that
lot of
this
work
is
to do on those properties if they're D's and
a
E's.
lot of work to do on those properties. So it's a brilliant opportunity for brokers in particular to go, right, okay. I was speaking to Mr. Mills 2 weeks ago about his investments, and he mentioned he's got this property that's unencumbered. What is he doing about it? How are we going to educate him around the EPC world? And there's all of those things that for brokers the opportunities are massive. So I think, going back to the original piece, we've got a lot of remortgages or mortgages coming to the end of their fixed
Yeah,
rate terms this year.
and genuine ones this
Great.
year, not just PTs.
Genuine ones. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
because if interest rates come off, then
yeah,
they are genuine. It's a threat for lenders. So will they
hmm,
get a little bit sexier on their PT proposition? Who
yeah,
knows? But it's also an opportunity for lenders and for brokers. And brokers have been, should I say, expressing their desire for additional procuration fees on PTs over the last
oh, they've
few
hardly
years.
mentioned it.
Hardly mentioned. It's not been mentioned. For us, we're okay, but I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not going to go into that.
yeah, yeah.
But yes, their income has in some instances been halved.
Hmm.
But I also think we've now got to the point where we've got a little bit lazy.
And they've also
Off the
kept the
back of
customer as
it.
well.
Yeah,
That customer is
they've
there
kept
for
the
that's the
customer.
lifetime
Yeah.
value of a customer rather than the last 2 years, right? We're not always going to be doing PTs.
Correct. So, and I do think this 2-year cycle is going to start to adapt, and we are going to see more of that. So, actually, there's an opportunity for brokers to revisit their customers more often.
Yeah.
We have to be careful what we wish for, because you might find a regulator that says, actually, are you only recommending 2 year because you
I
want
read
to
an
pay
article
it
about
every 2
yesterday
years?
actually about this is become it's. They were saying that the 2-year fix is now going to be more common because of the fact you get to go back to them, which doesn't
I
make
don't think
sense
it
in
is.
this
I
market,
think
because it's a 2-year fixed market because the rates are coming down.
Yeah, it's a result of the economic environment. It's got nothing to do with brokers being
Yeah.
savvy, because they haven't been savvy. We are typically a very reactive audience to our
Yeah.
customers, and not necessarily that proactive. Some of the really good businesses, who are the ones that have stood up and said, I've had a great time over the last 2 years or whatever, are very proactive.
Yeah.
Whereas those that your typical broker is very reactive.
Yeah.
And they need to get better at that, because actually this is when they complain
Well,
that
it's been a
lender's
relatively. I don't want to
contacted them.
be disparaging, because obviously that's 50% of my clients, but it's been a relatively easy market for brokers.
Until the last couple of years, it
You've only
has
been a
been
broker
very,
for 8 years, say. You haven't really hit any hard time. You haven't really had to sell anything. It's been cheap money and that kind of thing. So brokers
Yeah.
are now earning their crust, right? You're actually, like you say, going out, having to educate people on why this is good and why that is good, and maybe
Yeah.
different products that they weren't using before.
Yeah.
So it's a
which
good thing for the
builds
market.
it builds for a really good business in the future, because you've had to build that resilience, you've had to get better, you've had to be more proactive, you've had
Yeah.
to learn how to manage your
To sell again.
portfolio of customers. Yeah, and you've had to sell again, and you know what? Ultimately, I think that's a great outcome for the customer as well.
Yeah. I think I've read a stat that we lost 15% of the broker market during this turbulent time, but I can't tell you one, because I just think that's a part of the market that probably were very, very reactive and probably did a couple of months. There wasn't really, if you were the second income into the house, and I don't think that's good for the market to have them in anyway. I think brokers should constantly be learning.
Yeah, and naturally you're going to have those that again retire, because as we
Retired,
know,
yeah.
the average age of a broker, is
Old.
early 50s now. Yeah, so it's
That's
harsh.
the trouble. There's less and less every year as well, because more people are retiring than joining.
Yeah, and we
academy
struggle
issue.
we struggle to get the young ones in, because going back to again what we said, nobody
Oh,
wakes up and says I want to do mortgages. So it's
there's a YouTube generation as well, and if you tell someone like this is a cool job that takes a long time to get good at it and earn money, they're looking at these people that are making money off Bitcoin or whatever it is, instant gratification out of a job, rather than going, this is a job for life if you work really hard at it, and and it gets easier if you do it for 10 years. So, like, no one's interested in that.
No, sadly they're not, which again is interesting. But we've got an apprenticeship scheme at as do most financial services companies, and it's great. We did the last time we did an intake, we didn't go for postgrads, we went for school leavers.
Nice.
And it's great, it's brilliant, but they've all now gone into fairly junior roles.
Yeah.
And which is brilliant, and it's great, and it's worked really well for that cohort of people. So the next time we're going to mix it up a little bit and maybe have some people that are school leavers versus graduates. Yeah, so we'll have a little bit of a mix of the two of them, because again, that works, because you also need those people that do aspire to move up the career ladder that we talked about, and that are hungry for more and want to succeed. So we've got a great.
The academy has to carry on as well, doesn't it? It can't be like just in good times. It has to carry on. I saw something recently about some of the, I think there's a couple of the big five, when they stopped doing their graduate in accountancy. They stopped doing the graduate scheme when it got tough a few years ago. Now they can't work out whether they've got no middle management, because it's a roll-on, and we lost that. You lose 3 years of graduates, and then somewhere down the line you've lost 3 years of managers, 3 years of directors. It's a massive. There's a massive skills gap.
Yeah, and of course most businesses of any scale have to pay into the apprenticeship levy. So take it back. If you're paying for something, take the opportunity to take that as an advantage. And I think there's a lot of companies that don't. They just pay into it because they know they have to. But then they go, "Well, my business is not really made for apprenticeships. It doesn't really work." Well, make it work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, everyone can. There's a way. There's a way that you can. Well, I mean, we really struggle with it because recruitment is very much the resilience side of things is very hard. You get. If you have 4 good days a month, that means you're having 16 that are tough. To try and sell that to someone is not the easiest.
You just that bounce back ability.
Exactly.
You just
You can't
keep
show
bouncing
someone
back.
the joy of finding someone a job. Like, you can't express that. That's why we do it, because it's that 4 days that are amazing. But to tell someone you have 16 days where you get kicked in the teeth, it's not
a bit rubbish.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to ask you one last question, because I've kept you way over. I said I would, but
That's okay.
obviously you're always looking at the next leaders of the future and that kind of thing. That's part of your. We talked about men. We didn't even reach the mentorship bit. I'm going to have you on again. But what advice would you give, or what qualities do you see in people that you think they're the next future leaders? What do they need to be thinking about? And it's not always natural, right? So what do people need to be thinking about when they want to be the future leaders of, whether that be in banking or wherever they're in? What are you looking for in people?
I think it's continuous learning. I compare myself to maybe people that left university and they left with a degree that actually has probably no reference to financial services whatsoever. But I worked and I learnt and I learnt and I learnt and I made myself very visible. So I think it is continuous learning. Make sure that you know what it is that you're trying to focus on. Be quite clear, but also be prepared to flex, because a job is not for life anymore. You might change your career several times, and be prepared for that flexibility. If it's not working, find something that does. So absolutely. So I think for me, it's listening, be empathetic, make sure. For me, my door is always open, even when it's closed. They'll be messaging me on Teams, as has been happening just the last however long. But that's fine. Make yourself available. Make yourself visible, but also just continuous learning. I think it's really, really important.
Amen. Good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And thank you for your time. And thank you for everyone listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube. If anyone wants to get hold of Louisa, obviously all of your socials will be on our socials as we market the hell out of it.
But only LinkedIn.
But
I'm off the others.
If anyone wants to get hold of you, don't try Instagram. But if anyone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way? Is it through LinkedIn? Is the best way of contacting you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn works well.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much for your time, Louisa. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome.